What are the dark creatures of Alagaesia? Where do they live? What are they like? How dangerous are they? Today, on this episode of the Inheritance Cycle Analyzed, we discuss the fell things that lurk in the darkest places of Alagaesia. Hello everyone, this is Saberrex, and in this video we will be covering the characters, creatures, and plots of books and films such as the Primitive War franchise, the Inheritance Cycle, and so much more. So, without further ado, welcome, one and all. Just as there are many normal beasts in Alagaesia, there are also quite strange and dangerous creatures, the likes of which serve as constant reminders that there are places in the world where you should not tread lightly. Today, we discuss some of those dark creatures that live in the foulest places of Alagaesia. Some are the result of magic gone awry. Others evolved naturally. Some are even invasive species. Wherever they come from, they represent the most dangerous aspects of the wilderness and the unknown in the Inheritance Cycle, and other novels surrounding the land of Alagaesia. First up, we have a very familiar race of creatures, sentient, foul, and disturbing. They are the Lethrblaka and their offspring, the Razak. We've spoken a great deal about these creatures before in episode 2 of this series, and you can check out the playlist if you would like to understand more about them. We've said much about them, and we've speculated on their origins and what they are, but simply put, the Razak are the larval form of the larger Lethrblaka, and their juvenile state vaguely resembles humans so that they can get close enough to attack, kill, and eat them. They have a hard exoskeleton, massive black eyes the size of a human fist, and a razor-sharp beak. In their adult form, they vaguely resemble a pterosaur, but with soft skin, 7-foot-long razor-sharp beaks that are toothless, and massive talons. They look emaciated, like starving dogs in regards to their physique, but they are also immensely strong and they emit a foul odor. They are believed to have followed humans from whatever lands humans themselves originally came from when they emigrated to Alagaesia. When they were discovered, they were almost entirely eradicated in a well-justified genocide by the Dragon Riders. Only 2 of each form, Lethrblaka and Razak, remained by the time of the Inheritance Cycle, whereupon they entered the service of the story's main antagonist, King Galbatorix. They were all eventually killed by protagonists of the series, Aragon, his cousin Roran, and Aragon's dragon, Saphira. But some of their eggs still remained, laying hidden to one day return and cause chaos once more. Thus, they remain an ever-present danger. In regards to the story, they represent some of the darkest creatures in the land, sentient predators that feed on humans and act as assassins. They likewise represent a foul creature that not only acts like an invasive species and has a detrimental impact on the environment of the land, but also cannot be tracked or sensed with magic, making it that much harder to locate and eradicate them. For this reason, they pose one of the highest threats of any dark creature in the Inheritance Cycle. Next up on our list, we have Shades. Shades are basically humans or humanoids that have been possessed by spirits they tried to control with magic, specifically the branch of magic known as sorcery. Shades represent some of the most powerful and dangerous dark creatures in Alagaesia, ranking even above the Razak and Lethrblaka in regards to the threat they pose to society. They are often chaotic, desiring to cause devastation and destruction wherever they go. However, some of them are also very clever and cunning, more so than normal. They are also incredibly hard to kill, with the only way to destroy them for good being to pierce them in the heart with a weapon such as a sword. Any other blow that would kill a mortal would simply cause shades to vanish and reappear elsewhere, stronger than ever before. Before the events of the inheritance cycle, only 2 warriors had ever killed a shade and lived to tell the tale: Ernstad the rider and Letri the elf. From what we know of shades, they have red hair, pointed teeth, and pale skin. Thus far, only 2 have been seen in the inheritance cycle: Durza and Veraug. Durza was arguably the most dangerous of the 2, as he was able to think and act beyond the normal scope of a shade. This was in part due to his time spent with the cult of the Duel Dromar in their village of Nelgorgoth far to the north. He shared in their dreams, and thus his machinations were grander and his clarity sharper than was normal for a shade. He also created monsters that terrorized the regions he visited and traveled to long after he was killed during the first book of the inheritance cycle by Aragon. Varog, by comparison, only lived a short time after being created, having been killed in a joint effort by Aragon and the elf princess Arya Drottningu during the siege of Feinster in the events of the book Brisingar. The power of shades is increased with the number of spirits inhabiting their physical bodies. For example, they were many times stronger than a human, but Durza was only possessed by 3 spirits, while Varog was apparently possessed by 9 at least, perhaps dozens. As a result, the latter was even stronger than the former shade. Because of their rarity, they were only an occasional threat, but when they did appear, it often took many warriors and great sacrifice in order to bring them down. Shades also showcase the dangers of dabbling in magic too powerful for one to control. Because of the danger in sorcery of being possessed by spirits who do not want to be controlled, sorcery itself was not taught as part of the curriculum of dragon riders. Thus far, there has never been a rider who was also a shade, and such a thing would be considered an especially deadly abomination, considering their love of destruction and chaos. The next dark creature we will discuss on this list is a close relative of dragons, the Needwall. We have discussed these creatures before in a previous video, but it should be noted that they are considered a dark creature as per the words of the elder dragon Glader. While they may be closely related to dragons, they think themselves nothing alike their flying kin. They will also readily eat both dragons and their own kind, showing that they are incredibly bestial and feral. They care for nothing and no one outside their own realms. Any attempts to communicate with them have failed, and they usually live in the deepest, darkest parts of the sea, many days' journeys from land. Additionally, they represent the mysterious creatures and the potential dangers that live beneath the ocean's surface. They are also representative of the myths of sea monsters within the inheritance cycle. Following this, the next dark creature on this list is perhaps the most amusing, in part because it is clearly an obvious tribute to a similar monster in the comedy movie Monty Python and the Holy Grail. This monster is a white rabbit mentioned briefly in a story by the herbalist and witch known as Angela. While we don't hear the full story involving this rabbit, she makes it very clear that it is white with red eyes and a taste for flesh and blood. It apparently attacked the dwarf city of Kavoth and was quite large. It was eventually driven off by a dragon rider named Terran and his dragon Mimring, later known as Mimring the Brilliant for his clear, diamond-like scales. Whatever the case, Rumors persist of this monster, and every so often, wildlife in the area would turn up dead that looked like it had been nibbled at in the manner a rabbit would. And similarly, wandering warriors that strayed too far from the city into the forest would turn up dead with their throats torn out. We know virtually nothing else of this creature, but it does indicate that there are some monsters in Alagaesia that are both unexpected and equally terrifying. Another creature of note that could be considered a dark creature is one hailing from Vroengard, the original stronghold of the Dragon Riders before it was destroyed. This creature is the burrow grub. In the battle that did destroy the island city, Doru Areba, magical radiation was unleashed by a nuclear explosion created by Thuviel, a dragon rider who sacrificed himself to try and kill Galbatorix and his followers, the 13 Forsworn. He managed to kill one of them, Glaerun, but ended up irradiating the island when he destroyed himself in this explosion. The magical radiation that resulted distorted and altered many of the creatures on the island. Among those affected were the burrow grubs. Burrow grubs were small, maggot-like insects with soft bodies and sharp pincers. They could hop as a means of transporting themselves as well as crawling in a manner similar to a caterpillar. However, when they decided to attack or flee into the soil, they could split into 4 green centipedes that could burrow into flesh and devour their way through skin and muscle with surprising speed. They were used as a form of torture by Galbatorix, who controlled them using the Name of Names, the true name of the ancient language that controlled verbal magic. The burrow grubs were later given their own name in the ancient language by Aragon when he used the Name of Names after killing the king in their final battle. As such, they were from then on referred to as Ilgrother, which means bad hunger. The next creature on this list is another inhabitant of Vroengard. These were the Lethrblaka, or shadow flappers, a species of owl that had been mutated by the magical radiation of Thuviel's explosion. They could make themselves appear as 2-dimensional shadows, and their calls were similar to the chattering of squirrels. Though they are technically not malevolent by nature, they were ominous in appearance and were considered unnatural because of the circumstances that created them. An equally strange creature, also from Vroengard, was one that was distorted into a dark creature by the magical fallout from the battle that took place there. This was the Snalgli. Snalgli are giant snails, capable of moving as fast as a man could run. They were always native to the island, but due to the magical radiation that permeated the land, they became largely immune to spells that would alert others to their presence, rendering them particularly dangerous due to how stealthy they were. As the snails were also large enough to eat a full-grown human, they were in and of themselves quite dangerous in the fact that they would attack anything they saw as potential food. As they had no teeth, they swallowed their prey whole. However, it should be noted for dragons they also represented a delightful snack. Their meat was good for dragons to eat, and the shells were also good for a dragon's digestion. Likewise, another species created by the magical radiation that permeated Vroengard was the angler frog. These creatures were largely innocuous, but the mutations created by the explosion on the island left them with a permanent, flashy bioluminescent appendage above their eyes, which they could use to attract prey to them, such as nocturnal insects. Perhaps one of the more interesting dark creatures we will discuss on this list is the great fish known as muckmaw. Muckmaw was originally born a lake sturgeon. He had been caught by 3 boys, Hagen, Sharg Troutnose, and Nulf the Short by name, along the shore of Star Lake near the city of Gilead. When the boys decided to let the fish expire on the shore as a game to see how long they would last out of the water, they were happened upon by none other than the shade Durza. Realizing what they had done was wrong, they tried to throw the fish back, but Durza made them watch and see which fish would expire last, granting Muckmaw his freedom because he had held out the longest. Enchanting the fish with many spells, the shade released him back into the lake, stating that the sturgeon would be the bane of the three boys and all others in the lake until the end of their days, before disappearing. Muckmaw would then grow to reach tremendous size and live for over 60 years, terrorizing the fishermen in the region by cutting their nets with his razor-sharp scales, beating them with his tail when they fell into the water, and devouring anyone unfortunate enough to cross his path, including humans and werecats. The fish grew to a vast size, measuring at least 30 feet long by the time he was caught and killed by Aragon's half-brother, Murtagh, and his dragon, Thorn. We will be discussing this giant fish more in depth in a later video. The next dark creature of note in this list is the finger rat. This creature, which lives in the dark caverns beneath the village of Nalgorgoth, in the far northern reaches of the mountains of the Spine along the northern end of the Bay of Fundor, was arguably one of the foulest creatures to exist in those lands. They were naked, devoid of hair or fur save for whiskers and a few sparse sensory hairs, with very tiny eyes due to living in permanent darkness, punctuated only by the glow of bioluminescent mushrooms. Their hands were eerily human-like, with long and sharp, grimy fingernails, and their mouths were filled with translucent, needle-like teeth and a tongue that was long and prehensile, and did not entirely fit in their mouth. They gathered in swarms when they smelled or heard food, which in this case was the flesh of other creatures they attacked in mass. Due to the mysterious gases known as the breath that filled their habitat, they had no fear of death and would readily attack without provocation. They may have themselves been prey for the other creature lurking in the caves of Nalgorgoth, the shadow spiders. They were also parasites to a far more insidious creature, an entity known as Aslagor. We will discuss him more shortly. Murtagh would encounter them when pursuing the witch Bashel into the caves beneath Nalgorgoth into Oth Oram, the so-called heart of the world. He found the creatures greatly disturbing, and even more so when he realized they could have been living in hidden places beneath other cities like Gilead when he heard them make their strange, moaning calls. Another creature that inhabited the foul tunnels beneath Nalgorgoth and into Oth Oram was the shadow spider, a strange arachnid of great size and strength, being roughly the same size and weight of a very large wolf. They had no eyes, and their mouth was a huge mass of razor-sharp blades designed for slicing and filleting the flesh of anything they caught. The frontmost set was like a pair of mantis's spearing legs, used for grabbing prey with powerful pincers. Their armor was black and looked as though it had been comprised entirely of saw-toothed shadows, hence their names, and they were very heavy, feeling as though they were made of cast iron brought to life. This armor was also highly durable, able to take several blows from a dragon rider's sword before they would eventually fall. They were also deceptively fast for their size, being even faster than an elf, and only a dragon rider had much of a chance to kill one. They too were said to be parasites of Aslagor. And last, but certainly not least, we have what may be the most interesting and mysterious entry in this list: Alagaesia. We know very little about Alagaesia, but from reading the book Murtagh, it is implied that he is a dragon of great and terrible size as well as immense power. When Murtagh himself sees Alagaesia in a prophetic dream after being knocked unconscious during a boar hunt, we get our first and only look at the creature, seen as a wingless dragon as large as a mountain and as black as night, with piercing red eyes. The strange substance known as the breath may be one of his abilities, or may indeed be his actual breath, which causes hallucinations and visions as well as inducing helplessness in those who inhale it. He also has the ultimate control and lends his energy to the Duel Dromar, the dark cult that worships him, giving them the needed power to their speaker, Bashel, to control their magic in the surrounding valley and access power beyond what they would normally have. The cult also considers other dragons to be lesser aspects of Alagaesia, and based on their words, Alagaesia himself has no problem with eradicating other members of his own race as part of his ultimate goals, whatever they may be, which may include destroying the world. Thus far, beyond the vision seen by the main characters, he has not yet appeared in person, but will likely play a role as the main antagonist in the sequel to Murtagh. And so we end our list of the dark creatures we have seen thus far or heard about in the Inheritance cycle and its sequels. Will we get to see more creatures like this as the story progresses? Yes, I believe so. Stories are often difficult to tell without a monster of one form or another. They also make for interesting obstacles for the protagonists to overcome. As such, I hope we see many more in Christopher Paolini's stories. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Every bit of appreciation helps out this channel and makes it grow so I can share more content with you. You can also view other videos in this series by clicking on the playlist relating to this video series. As always, thank you for watching.